These days, there are two ways to run Ansys, specifically Ansys Workbench. You can run it locally. Say you download the free student version onto your personal computer, then you can run it, and personal Windows computer, then you can run it locally. You also have the choice of running it in the cloud through a cloud service. The cloud service we use at Cornell is Amazon AppStream, which is also referred to as Apps on Demand, which is a local instance of it, or it's also referred to as Ansys Online in my circles. If you're going to be running Ansys locally, this is the video that will go over starting Ansys and saving your work. And saving your work is the tricky part. If you're using the cloud install, I have a separate video that goes over starting Ansys and saving work. If I go to my monitor and I start in the search window, I type in Workbench, and I see I have Workbench 2022 R1. That's the version I'm using in this recording. The details might be slightly different in other versions. I also have an older version here, so you can have multiple versions of Ansys Workbench installed on the same computer. And let me click on Workbench 2022 R1. And if I twiddle my thumbs and take a couple of deep breaths and relax, Ansys comes up. So starting is easy. Let's talk about saving, because I've seen it, confusing students. So let me say, first thing I do is I save. So I'll do File, Save, and I'll go to my working directory and I'll give it an appropriate name. I'll call it, let's say bar_1D, and it's going to save it in the WBPJ format. And I'll say save. And if I go to my working folder, I see that it's created a WBPJ file and an associated folder and a backup, and the backup will go away when I exit Ansys. So you need to, and one thing that's confused students is they think you need only the WBPJ, but you also need this associated folder. And so if you don't save this, if you move it to a different computer and so on, and you just move WBPJ, you will lose all your work, and you will end up pulling out your hair and looking like me, which I'm not recommending. So if you're saving everything, you should save this, and the backup will give you, lock error, so you should exit Ansys cleanly. Or there is a nicer way to save, which is to say File, Archive. And here you see it'll save it in WBPZ format. So I'm going to my working folder, and if you look at the name, the last letter is zip, or Z for zip. So Ansys will zip everything, and I'll say save, and I'll select everything, save, results, save imported files. The only reason not to save these is to save on space, but let's not worry about that now. So I'll just say archive. And if I go to my working folder, you see it's created this single file, and I just need to save this. I don't need all the others. For instance, if you're moving this to another computer, then you just need to move this one file. So I tend to work in the WBPJ format, and then at the end, I'll save it as an archive if I need to move it to a different computer. And if I want to read it in from the WBPZ, okay, so let me show you how to do that. Let me maximize this. And then I'll say File, Open. And I'll read it in from WBPZ, Z for zip. And it'll ask you to save it in the conventional format. So either I can overwrite this or I can, call it something else. If I call it blah, once it's done with the saving, I see I have the blah files and blah.wbpj. So I'm now working with blah. So you can overwrite, bar underscore 1D. You can also start the WBPZ from the WBPZ by right-clicking and saying open with, and I will pick the latest version that I have. You don't need to do this. Is this for demonstration? Now I have two workbenches running. So I'm using two licenses. I have access to multiple licenses. You may not, so you don't need to follow along here. But I just wanted to show you that this comes up as unsaved project. But if I say File, Save, it'll say, do you want to overwrite the WBPZ or save a copy? If I say save a copy, then I can save it as a new WBPZ. But often what I'm doing is just overwriting that, the WBPZ that I already have, which is over here. So I will exit this and exit the other one, and then go back to my bar 1D dot or underscore 1D, and then make sure it's saved, and I'll continue working with bar underscore 1D.